What's up, everybody? This is the DeFi enthusiast here. Welcome to the channel, guys, and I hope you're all doing well. With me, I've got Kenzo Trading from Morphware. Welcome back, man. How are you? It's been, what, more than a year since we last spoke about your incredible project, Morphware, and obviously the market dynamics and everything have changed since then. New chains have come up, new things have come up. So tell me, man, firstly, before we talk about Morphware, what have you been up to? How's everything with you?
Great. Basically, Morphware is basically, just to recap for people that didn't watch the last interview, Morphware is a decentralized machine learning network. But what's really interesting about what we're doing here is if you take a step back and you think about basically the process of bootstrapping a peer-to-peer network, you basically need a super peer, or you don't necessarily need one, but it's helpful. So what we decided to do was to come down to Paraguay, because in Paraguay, the electricity isn't just 100% renewable, it's super duper cheap. There's a lot of history there behind the dam that you can look at. It's called the Itaipu. Long story short, Paraguay and Brazil constructed this dam together a long time ago, but Paraguay has much less of a need for electricity. So they actually auction off a lot of the electricity back to Brazil, and they sell a bit of that to Argentina. But long story short, the electricity price in Paraguay is super cheap. And it was our vision to come down here and to bootstrap a super peer. So I've been here a year and a half, believe it or not. Something that's super interesting about what we're doing is now we have the computing equipment in the country. We have an agreement with, believe it or not, an old sponge factory. There's basically a, not necessarily defunct, but it's a sponge factory that's not being used right now. It's about 40 minutes away from the city. And what's really cool about that is they actually have 2.86 megawatts going already to their facility. So it's a well-kept roof, which is really important for rains and leaks, because sometimes here when it rains, it pours. Computing equipment's obviously got to be kept dry. But yeah, that's basically what we're doing down here.
Amazing, amazing. And so tell me, man, so this is just like this is so you guys shifted from, I think last time we spoke, you were in the US, right? If I'm not mistaken, or
Exactly. I was in New York.
right, correct. So, so what use cases are you guys building for Morphware right now? I mean, what are the plans? Like, I know machine learning is all AI related, obviously. So I'm sure Morphware is going to play a huge role in the AI market in the crypto space as well. And so, like, could you like for those people, like, let's say somebody new came in, right, and they're like, man, I want to learn about good projects. Of course, I know we've talked about Morphware in great detail in the past as well, but like for a newcomer, how would you get them interested in your project? Like somebody who wants to invest in, I know the tokens aren't out, I know the coins aren't out, and we'll touch on that as well. But if somebody were to invest in your project, what as a person that is not really too tech savvy, how would you explain that to them? What like what use cases does Morphware have, and how can it change the blockchain space?
That's a great question. So basically, one of the things I haven't spoken about is the fact that let me just start off with large language models. So something that's really interesting, right when we started Morphware, and I was doing a little marketing for it, I used a little program called GPT-2, or a model called GPT-2, to start producing smart contract code. I actually published that on LinkedIn, and at the time it blew people's minds. And it was all command line driven. It was really interesting. I did it on a single GPU that I had at home, on like basically a desktop workstation. But what was really cool about that is we already kind of had this idea and this slant towards language models, if you will. A couple years before that, so that was back in 2021, a couple years before that, believe it or not, I gave a lecture, it may be online somewhere, at Interactive Brokers, which is a major, for people that don't know, a major equities brokerage. What's interesting there is I gave a lecture called Exploring Natural Language Processing. The original title of the lecture was Exploring Natural Processing for Trading. But long story short, it couldn't be called that for legal reasons because of interactive brokers lawyers. But what was really interesting about that was, or I guess the takeaway there is that I do have some domain expertise in the natural language processing space. And what's interesting is now ChatGPT has made everything really hot with like the release of GPT-3 and GPT-4. And I feel like we're kind of well positioned to not necessarily pivot the desktop client towards language models, but to extend it towards it. So right now, the way that the desktop model works, if you've seen the demo, so we have the demo floating around online. The cool thing about basically our desktop client is that you can go ahead and just train a model inside of a Jupyter notebook. And that can include a language model. But what a lot of people want to do isn't necessarily train models. They want to use pre-existing ones and not even fine tune them. So there's a lot of startups that have actually approached us in the past half year about running proprietary language models for chatbots. Not even necessarily proprietary models, but open source models that they fine tuned or whatever. But the problem is we don't have GPUs with enough VRAM right now because the floor of the amount of VRAM that you need to run a mid-sized language model, actually a small language model compared to, say, GPT-3 and what ChatGPT is doing, is at least 24 gigs of VRAM, if not way more, right? So I think the thing is that we're really well positioned here because when you look at kind of like the long game, and this is what I think that it kind of distinguishes us a little bit from other projects, we really had a long-term and serious vision about what we were doing. So when you look at basically like the P&L of a data center or a business behind a data center, what's really interesting is 65% of the costs of a data center are uniformly related to the price of electricity within that region. So Paraguay has an extremely low price of electricity, but it's very hard to get these electrical contracts, especially do it the right way. So we've gone ahead and actually done the hard work of going out, pitching the power authority here. It's really funny when we first came down here. And I guess the last time we interviewed was when I was in New York. So I guess you haven't heard this story, but it was just like we were like, "Hey, we're in crypto. We'd love to buy some electricity. Can you help us out?" And they were like, "Get they're like, get the fuck out of here." They're like, "No, no, we want nothing to do with crypto. It's blah 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 blah, all this different stuff." And they just had like a terrible impression of crypto. It's hilarious. I've never met people more like anti-crypto than people in Paraguay. It's really funny. Um, but eventually, like after a year, and with like we basically hired a really prestigious law firm here that we were referred to by Gravis Law or great attorneys in the United States. And then they got us in touch with the Power Authority and helped us negotiate. But what's really interesting is, yeah, basically, I think something I also haven't spoken about. So that's like, so the first thing is like language models. The second thing is the question of what if your network isn't at 100% usage, what do you do with the super peer's spare electricity, right? So when it comes to spare electricity, one thing that you can do, I mean, you could do anything with spare electricity. You could mill, you could just do anything. You could do anything you want. But one thing you could do is mine Bitcoin, right? So the way that we basically kind of envisioned using that spare electricity was generating revenues by mining Bitcoin, and those revenues would go ahead and create a fund that we'd be able to pay open source contributors from for the next and final step of the project, which is ZK proving or ZK mining. I'm just going to kind of use ZK mining as a colloquial phrase. A lot of like the ZK people would probably be a little ruffled if like you keep saying ZK mining instead of like proving or whatever. But just to kind of like tie the concept down for everyone, what's really interesting is that I think that that's kind of like the final frontier of what we're doing down here. Because what's really interesting, if you think about it, is, and I could be totally wrong about this in terms of predictions, and a lot of people that do make predictions, if you will, kind of do fall flat on their face. So I'm a little anxious to do that here. But what's interesting is like the blockchain world has basically gone from extremely electro-intensive processes, like computational processes, aka mining Bitcoin, to kind of like the momentum shifted towards everything is super environmentally friendly when you think about Near, Algorand, and then eventually Ethereum, switching to proof of stake, right? All this different stuff. But what's interesting, I think, is like the next step is that it's going back to electro-intensive processes because most ZK-based solutions need a proving mechanism or a proving component. So that's kind of like what we're gearing up for. And what's really interesting, so I'll tell you, so an old boss of mine is a great guy who I learned a lot from. He said he said a really interesting thing. He said bad traders only talk about their wins. So I'm gonna go a little like I'm gonna get a little vulnerable and go a little not negative, but just like talk about some stuff that's happened recently. Like recently we applied to the consensus accelerator, right? Or the pre-accelerator, the fellowship, and we didn't get in. This was actually yesterday, right? So it's super fresh. But what's interesting here is they were like, you know what? I talked to the director. I was like, hey, do you have any feedback for us about how we can better improve our posture and our application for the next cohort? And he was basically, listen, man, I thought you guys are great, but we're hyper focused on software type stuff, and we're not so focused on node infrastructure. But what we can do is get you talking to the folks over at Linea. So Linea's consensus's ZK mechanism, and from a team perspective and a community perspective, based and kind of just like a project perspective, if you will, I think something that we're going to go ahead and do is try to see if we can develop an angle where we're focused on splitting instead of doing Bitcoin mining, which is super kind of capex intensive, doing in addition to the machine learning stuff, having the machine learning component still there, obviously, because that's kind of like our foundation, and it's where we all have strong backgrounds, and we all find it super exciting. But then also going straight towards the ZK stuff. So the thing was earlier on in the project, we're basically halfway, like roadmap wise, we're halfway complete towards developing a semiconductor, believe it or not, semiconductor IP for ZK mining for the MENA protocol. But we, just looking runway wise, just because the market dynamics, as you mentioned, we weren't able to afford continuing to develop that. But I think that basically we could string something together for Linea, or at least make a pitch to consensus where we're like, hey, we've got this electricity available. We don't have to go develop our own substation. We don't have to like do the hard work of like buying a transformer in Mexico, getting a ship down here, up the river on a barge, blah, 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 and then getting it to like this like warehouse facility. So I think basically that we may kind of go straight towards that, having the ZK mining do the offload when there isn't enough machine learning workloads on the network, instead of the Bitcoin mining. And I think we're going to be targeting Linea for that pitch.
Excellent, excellent. So for those who, of course, some of the most popular chains, in the space are Binance Smart Chain. We've got, of course, the Ethereum chain, right? And then, and recently Basechain as well, which we can touch upon as well. But like, what do you feel? I mean, what sets Linea apart, from all these chains? Like I know a lot of people see that on their MetaMask, right? They see the Linea chain, but like a lot of people, they don't know exactly what it does. So like if you had to summarize it, and simplify it, what exactly is the Linea chain, and how is it helping you guys in terms of what, your vision and what you're planning to do?
I'm going to be honest here. I think, well, two things. Just take a step back. I think what's really interesting, first of all, is I think it was a guy from Intel that said this. It might have been like Gordon Moore or something, but or it might have been the guy that won the Turing Award, who was like the guy who did the RISC-V processor. I can't, John something. But long story short, he said what's really interesting about technology is the market actually decides, like with regards to like what is adopted eventually by the masses, if you will. And what I'm trying to say there is the best, just kind of like whatever the qualitative metrics are about like the best the best solution may not be eventually adopted by everyone, right? Just first of all. And then second of all, just to be completely honest, I don't really know what Linea's merits are over, say, like ZK Sync, or I mean, like, obviously there's like a couple talking points that every chain has. But to be quite honest, I'm a little apprehensive to kind of talk about one one ZK solution's merits over the other, because I don't know enough about each particular project. And but for us, what's a matter of is literally just using the spare electrical workload, or the spare electrical capacity rather, when there aren't enough workloads on the machine learning network.
Got it. Got it. So yeah, I mean, it basically suits whatever you guys are doing, whatever you guys are building. And yeah, it
Yeah,
makes sense. Makes sense.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Like,
awesome.
sorry,
And
just yep.
yeah, go on.
Oh, just to continue on the thread, say like it's Mina, say like Mina's paying out the most money on the proving marketplaces versus Linea with regards to like ZK acceleration or like proving acceleration. It's like, let's just switch. We could literally, that'd be so easy in our software to just switch from one thing to the other, as long as we had the right accelerators in place. Um, so yeah, I mean, like, I think that basically, for us, we're actually pretty indifferent to any particular chain's claims about what's better. I mean, to be honest, because like that's the thing, right? I mean, and the other thing is, honestly, in this day and age, especially in like the bear market, I think that people are so, they're like, it's like if I say something bad about one chain versus another, if I'm like, oh, like these are my thoughts on, I don't know, Solana, right? Like someone's gonna, like someone with a giant Solana bag is gonna be like up in the, up in the comment section, just like, wow, this motherfucker, like, you know what I mean, da 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 da, just going off. So I'm a little, I guess I think in the crypto world right now, especially in the bear markets, like we're all kind of like together in this. Like we're all kind of like under one thing. It's like it's kind of us against the world, if you will. Um, and I think that solidarity. I think that solidarity is important. Because this is like a futuristic technology that hasn't been adopted by the masses yet, and is being co-opted by like major corporations and frankly like governments. And they're trying to just basically strip out the technology and leave the developers and the community behind. I mean, not to get like not to get
Exactly.
conspiratorial, but it's kind of like what it seems like.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree with you on that. I mean, I feel like I had a really interesting interview um, with this person, with this gentleman about blockchain, about the blockchain space. You know how it's changed over the years, and I feel that it's just I actually had a conversation with Amin Rafi. I don't know if you know him, but he's a pretty, he's like an OG crypto guy, and he's got his Dow University as well. He's where he's like literally all about crypto education. And so I had the same conversation with him, and I asked him, what changes have you seen in the market, and what do you feel? I mean, I would like to ask you, like, how do you feel? Like, do you feel the space is more like, has it become more polarized now than ever before, or like, do you feel like it's like there's a lot of innovation, or has it just mainly become more of a money grabbing scheme, or something, as governments talk about it like this, like some call it a Ponzi scheme, some call it this, some call it that. But the irony is that the big institutions are buying up Bitcoin, and they're buying up Ethereum and this and that. So it's like they want to just keep misguiding the retailers. How like and the problem with the markets that I feel is that the investors in this space, while I feel one great thing that cryptocurrency did, and I don't know if you're going to agree with me or not, but one thing I feel is that they gave an open door to literally even like a 12 or 13-year-old kid to invest in something, right? To invest in an idea, which was something back in the day, which was only accessible to the big boys, right? You got your Silicon Valley and this and that, but this really changed the space. So, like, what are your thoughts on this, man?
That's a great question. Just taking a step back, I think when we look back at like the most recent bull run, what was kind of emblematic of that time period was the overwhelming emphasis on the importance of having a partnership, especially if you were a smaller project, right? So basically you had all these really smart, innovative, excited builders going out to the major corporations of the world, which have a fiduciary obligation not to give a shit about anything else aside from this, the shareholder, right? So they're going out to these major corporations and they're saying, we've got this great new technology. It's going to disrupt everything. It might even disrupt your business, right? And these guys are going, and these guys are hearing this, maybe once or twice. They go, yeah, whatever, kid, right? And then they see it in the Wall Street Journal, they see it in Bloomberg, they see it in the Financial Times, and they're going, oh fuck, like, and then now their shareholders are calling them, right? Like, hey, how are you gonna, if it's like a major credit card processing company, right? Like, hey, how are you gonna compete with Bitcoin? Or hey, like, what do we need this and that for? Now we've got smart contracts now, you know what I mean? So I think corporations started to go, fuck, like what we need to do is figure out one, how to innovate, evolve, blah, 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 so we don't get left behind like Kodak when like Sony released like the digital camera or whatever, or whoever did, and I guess it was Nikon or Canon. But the idea here is I think you had a bunch of smart builders pitching these major corporations, and then the people in the major corporations were like, shit, we got to innovate, do all this different stuff, right? And on top of that, you had these people on crypto Twitter just basically sounding the rallying cries, like, yeah, fuck the major corporations, and like fuck this and that, like we're going to take over and da 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 da. And I'm not saying any of that's bad. I'm just saying now that prices are depressed, you do have a lot of those like little innovation labs inside these corporations have kind of been spun down, but the ones that still exist are probably doing something really cool, and something probably from an IP slant where they do have some like intellectual property protections or offensive rights, as they call them in law, I think. So I think that kind of makes like a complicated environment. But I would submit personally that like all the scam projects and stuff are like actually, I think that people that kind of do those scam projects are much less incentivized to perpetrate them, if you will, because it's kind of like they're like, well, maybe like the demand isn't out there for anything, right? Because at the very height of the bull run, and I'm not sure exactly when that was from a time series perspective, but at the very height of the bull run, there were just like, I mean, people were just trying to get like exposure to the market, right? So I'd be like, oh, it's like television inu coin, or like, you know what I mean? It was just like the most random, just like, right? And then it'd be like, well, this is like the new one, it's like television inu cash, like, it'd be like, it just people just looking for yield no matter where it was coming from. um I don't know. I think when you take a step back, I think like a lot of the scam projects have kind of died down. But with the question of like, are people building? Yeah, I mean, like something that's been really humbling for me is after we got like rejected by the Consensus Fellowship Program, they actually invited us to the Telegram, and I was like, all right, but I was like, okay, well, actually, these other projects are pretty cool. Like, you know what I mean? So I was like, all right. I mean, like, shit. Like, I mean, there are obviously people still doing like really exciting things out there, and I think, like to quote an advisor of ours, Anthony Albertorio, he said, "Crypto winners where people make friends." Because there's like an extreme sense of solidarity because we're all here. Because there's a lot of people just kind of like on the outside that came in at the very end of like the crypto bull run that were just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna buy Bitcoin at like 60,000, da 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 da, and then they got super disappointed when like it crashed in price, and they're just like, oh, crypto's a scam, blah 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 blah. So I'd submit that basically, it's kind of a mixed bag. But people are definitely still building out there, or biddling, as they say.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, I think regarding all that, those Inu coins and this and that, we saw that again, like not too long ago, a few months ago. I don't know if you remember, there was this whole Pepe craze, right? And
Oh yeah,
where
yeah, Pepe, right? Yeah,
where
I missed that one.
literally minted new millionaires, and And then we saw Pepe 2.0 and 3.0 and 4.0 and so on and so. And then well, what else was there, man? Like there was like all this burn Pepe, and literally somebody made an anti-movement against Pepe, which was called, F Pepe, right? That was another one. And so like this whole thing happened, and but so the markets are still behaving in very similar ways, just like a little bit. It's like not as hyped as it was during the bull run. I think we're gonna see all that again, because if that can happen in a bear market, man, like just imagine what's gonna happen in a bull market, right? So
Yeah.
coming to the bull market and all the developments, what like I know Morpher is all about machine learning, but like, are you building several different products on, with, related to Morphware? Like, what are you guys working on? Do you want to talk about that, or do you want to keep it under wraps? Like, like,
That's,
um,
so
because I would really like to, because personally, man, when I got into the, with the group, right, and I got into Morphware personally as well. I liked what you guys were doing, man. Like, like it's innovative, it's different. I could see a future there because, of course, AI and machine learning and everything. This is where things are going, and it coincides perfectly with crypto. But you guys were already doing this before this narrative even took off, right? This whole AI narrative,
exactly.
like you guys have been building and building and building. So, me, I'm curious, and I would like, my audience to, know exactly what you guys are kind of doing. I mean, you can, of course, I'm sure there's stuff that you don't want to talk about, but what can you tell me? Like, what are you guys exactly up to? Like, what's
Well,
the plan?
yeah, so the last little component of things we're working on and something that we've already built is the carbon credit exchange. So Darshan, our lead dev, super great guy. I've mentioned him before, I'm sure, on the previous interview. He designed basically a carbon credit exchange. So when I went to Austin, here's a really interesting thing. I didn't know this until I came to Paraguay. Um, the carbon credit space is booming, right? There's a lot of press up there about it now. That's kind of like it's kind of back and forth on it. It's funny. It's like carbon credits are almost like the new crypto in a sense. But long story short, there's been a bunch of attempts to tokenize carbon credits, and basically, yeah, it's just been chaos in that entire space for a variety of reasons. One of the reasons is because the way a carbon credit works is this. Let's say you have a bunch of land. I mean, like literally like 50,000 hectares of land or something like that, right? Just like an insane amount of land. And like basically there are organizations that will pay you to conserve that land. What I mean is, instead of going ahead and chopping down all the trees on the land and raising cattle to make money from it, so you can pay like the taxes on having the land, right? Which is kind of like the norm around the world, right? So the way that actually works is there's a standards organization that issues the carbon credits, and then long story short, basically what happens is oil companies buy those carbon credits to offset their emissions, or like the emissions related to petroleum production, right? Here's what's really interesting is the standards organizations are very powerful. And not only are they powerful, they're very slow for a good reason, because there's been a lot of crappy projects in the carbon space. Because basically a lot of people go, well, shit, maybe I can just like make carbon credits and do like the cattle thing or like whatever, like who knows, right? So there's a lot of like, there's basically a long due diligence process. And what's interesting is the most powerful standards organization is an organization called Verra, VERRA, and that's in Washington D.C. So what's really interesting about Verra is Verra said, you know what? There's been so many crappy attempts at tokenizing carbon credit, and we're already getting so much controversy from the press writing about carbon credit projects that we're going to put essentially an embargo on the ability to tokenize our carbon credits, right? But a lot of people in the carbon space are expecting them to release a set of standards so people can go ahead and tokenize carbon credits in a way that's compliant with the standards that they're responsible for maintaining and updating, right? So I actually, me personally, it's really interesting. I actually was part of that process where we actually, they released like this thing where it was like a public comments type thing. I actually submitted some comments and they were published by Vera. And what's really interesting, and the reason I did that is because one of the largest carbon credit producers in South America, when I came down here, was like, hey, da da da, oh, you're trying to do Bitcoin mining. We're not really interested in that. But if you want to get involved in the carbon credit stuff, that's something that we could like basically work together on. So Morphware basically has a 33% claim to carbon credits sold on this one particular exchange called Midori Earth that like we've gone ahead and already built, or Darshan actually built by himself. I mean, I did some of like the prototyping, but he really like hauled ass on that. And the general idea there is this: when you step back and you look at crypto, one of the biggest detractions, or one of the biggest points. Hold on, sorry. I think there's a guy outside for some reason because I hear my thing going off. Let me just. Do you mind if I just check who's outside at the door?
Sure. I'll
All right,
stop
cool.
do you want me to stop the recording or should I just keep going? Like I can pause it. Yeah, I
No, no,
think.
no, no. Sorry, I just heard the doorbell ring twice, and then I was like, I wonder who that is.
No, it's okay. Please, no, please go ahead. I'm just gonna pause the recording.
No,
It's all good.
no, no, no. It's I think they're just people fundraising or something. All right,
Oh, okay.
all right, so yeah, it's a different world down here, man. Anyway, back to what I was saying. With regards to the carbon credit stuff, the thing is, tokenizing carbon credits is tough, but I think that we actually have a unique engineering slant on it from a smart contract perspective, which Darshan wrote is really cool. And the general plan here is this: when you come back to basically going ahead and when you think about the main criticisms of crypto, especially from an infrastructure side, one of the main criticisms is related to the climate, right? Climate impact, climate change, this sort of thing. And what we basically intend to do is not just be carbon neutral, but obviously perhaps to create a liquidity pool, right? So what we intend to do is this: basically take the carbon credits that are tokenized, which have a lot of value. These are like these carbon credits. Each one, believe it or not, a metric ton of carbon from Vera sells for like, I think it's like $8 to $12. It's for each carbon credit. It's actually super high, and I think 1 hectare can produce like, I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at the numbers, but they're pretty high. I mean, like 1 hectare can produce like 1 to 300 tons of carbon per year over the life of the project. Or I'd have to go back and look at the numbers, but it's pretty attractive. So long story short is this: we take basically the flow that we get, Morphware, right? The actual tokenized carbon credits. We put them into a liquidity pool with Morphware token, right? And as like the number of carbon credits grows, the more stable Morphware basically becomes, right? So that's kind of like what we plan to go ahead and do. Yeah, just like to go ahead and one, be able to release Morphware as a token, but two, to establish some price stability, if you will. That's our intention.
Awesome, awesome. I think that's something which has not been done yet, and I feel that this is like a very, very different. Some you guys can introduce something really different to the blockchain space, and I think it's going to really, really, play out pretty well in my view because I feel that the real world assets narrative is really, really massive right now in the crypto space as well, the RWAs. Do you feel that these carbon assets could be considered as RWAs, like in the future?
Absolutely, because what's really interesting about a carbon credit is it seems so simple, but it actually makes a lot of sense, right? So like basically carbon credits, so like what we're talking about are what are called nature-based solutions. And just so you know, like Occidental Petroleum, there was a big story in Bloomberg recently, or I think it was Wall Street Journal or Bloomberg, I'm not sure. But Occidental Petroleum basically went ahead and wound down this type of technology that basically sucks carbon out of the air and buries it into the ground. The problem is it's super electricity intensive to do that. And when you look at it from that perspective, from like a net um, pollution perspective, it actually creates more carbon, or basically like, maybe it basically makes the offset very small because it uses so much electricity to suck carbon out of the air and then bury it into the ground, right? That's a non-nature-based solution. A nature-based solution is going to seem really simple, but what's really exciting here is basically, this is so crazy, but this is how it works. Let's say you have a tree on a piece of property that is related to a carbon credit project. What happens is that tree, if it's growing, every year it gets a little bigger. I mean, by that I mean it gets taller and wider. It has more branches. It had the trunk actually gets wider, right? And there are really advanced mathematical formulas that are totally legit to go ahead and calculate how much carbon has been sucked out of the air by that tree on a year-to-year basis. So basically, with regards to your question about real-world assets, what's really interesting is what's being accounted for by the standards organizations as those trees get wider and wider and taller is basically that captured carbon, right? Because those trees aren't being chopped down. Because like it's a United Nations like related standard, but it's called REDD Plus, REDD Plus, and this is something that Filecoin's very passionate about too. We have actually spoken to them at length about this, but REDD Plus stands for, I think it's like the reduction of emissions and degradation and deforestation or something like that. I don't really remember what it is, but long story short, REDD is kind of like one of these types of standards, if you will, I believe. And that's with the very broad strokes, at least my understanding of how things work.
Very, very fascinating. This is amazing, actually. Something like this is like very different from the usual, things that we get from crypto projects in general, right? Like a lot of them are just copying each other. Everybody's copying each other, and you know, uh, everybody's speculating, and but I feel that with Morphware, it's like a long-term road. It's like I don't want to say I don't want to hype up people too much, but it's like, if you were to buy Ethereum at $1, or I don't know, whatever the price is going to be, but it's like kind of like that, right? It's like something different, something you guys are trying to build a completely different sort of environment in the crypto space, naturally following all the diligence and everything, and keeping it as legit as possible. But and I think it's really interesting. So do you have a name for this DEX that you guys have built? Sorry, is this exchange a DEX or no?
Yeah, it's a DEX.
It's
So
a DEX.
it's called Midori.
Uh,
Yep, which I think means Midori. It means Earth in Japanese,
okay, okay,
and
awesome,
yes, I think. But basically, yeah, it's called Midori. It's a project that basically Morpher's a part of, and it's something I'm super excited about.
awesome. And so coming to the next question, when is this exchange coming out, like to the public? Any dates for that yet, or?
So that's a really good question. So basically, the problem right now is, well, there's two things. One, there's a carbon developer that we're working on with, and the thing is that the project that we want to work with in South America is still tied to the Vera, the standards organization in DC, not basically going ahead and allowing their members to tokenize carbon credits. But here's what's really cool. We have our other partner on this carbon exchange, this guy Will, basically, and he's the head of a company called Creative Carbon. What's cool is basically they have a claim to 130 million carbon credits that are related to basically like efficiently doing something with like trash. So like basically like they sort trash really efficiently with a giant machine in the Dominican Republic, and they have 130 million credits. And he's told me that he wants to put them on the exchange. So that's really exciting. He was just in the DR, and he actually lives in Paraguay. So when he's back, I think we'll be able to ramp that up. But yeah, I think that thing, ideally, I mean, I don't know. I'd have to talk to Will about to put a date on it to be really confident about that. But something I'd be happy to talk about on a follow-up interview.
Absolutely, man. I mean, on a follow-up interview, maybe whenever you guys are about to release it, we can like do a walkthrough of the entire exchange, and you can tell me all the features and all that. That'd be really awesome. You know.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. We even have a video that you may be able to like splice in here or tack on the end
mhm.
of the exchange actually working. And it's cool. It's all on chain. I mean, it's on a test net, but it actually works. And yeah, it's pretty cool.
Awesome, man. I would love to. I do that. I definitely attach that video at the very end. For sure, for sure. Yeah, yeah,
Cool.
as you know, like I usually do the interviews without any cuts and edits and stuff. So, but I'll just add that, the thing, to the entire process as well. So that's really awesome, man. And so this is under the Morphware wing, right? So this is like one of the, I think,
Yep.
all right. And is there anything else that you guys are also working on? Anything else that you want to touch upon, at the moment
Just
regarding?
no, it's the ZK stuff. The Bitcoin mining stuff is going pretty slow because I mean we were having a lot of like really advanced talks with Ant Alpha and Bitmain, but the problem is they're not willing to go ahead and loan equipment out to people after basically they got kind of burned with a. I think that basically like a lot of crypto miners kind of defaulted on their loans. So I think they became less confident in doing things, especially in a place like Paraguay, where things are a little bit trickier than doing things in, I don't know, say like a place like the US.
Makes sense. But here's something interesting that I wanted to ask. Why do you feel there's such a, anti-crypto view in Paraguay? I mean, is there any particular reason for that? I thought I felt that there's like too much of an anti-crypto narrative in the US, but I'm like very surprised that Paraguay kind of, um is sort of in that same bracket. Like, like, oh, do you want to touch on like why do you feel like I thought that the US had a pretty anti-crypto narrative, and of course, at least the way I see it, the crypto markets are controlled when it comes not when it comes to the innovation and technological aspect, like people like you and other great projects that are actually building, they've got nothing to do with this. But when I feel that the financial market aspect of crypto is highly manipulated by the big boys, and yeah, like the one percenters and so on and so forth. At least I mean, people can say it's a conspiracy theory, but I feel that every time, because what I've noticed this trend that whenever there's an anti crypto narrative going on, you see all these major and big institutions buying up their favorite assets, and a lot of people, the average investor is like selling in fear, and then when they want to sell, they overhype crypto as the next big thing in all the news outlets and media, and use the naive investor as exit liquidity, I would say. So
Yep.
but a lot of these big players are from the US, and I can sort of get why there's like this, pretend, I would say it's like a whole drama sort of thing, like that oh, crypto is bad and this and that. But why is Paraguay, you know, fitting into that bracket? I mean, is there any particular reason why they don't like crypto?
I think it's a lot of ignorance, to be honest. I mean, what I mean by that is there's just like to be honest, I think it's just I well one so Paraguay is a largely agrarian society. I think an overwhelming, and I mean like over maybe 90% of the economy or something is related to beef production and to soy production. So there's almost no foreign direct investment in technology. And like long story short, like I got into an argument with the guy here because believe it or not, I got into an argument with the guy here, a guy who I'm friends with now, but a guy who I thought was like a stupid dickhead before. He was like, he was like, "Oh yeah, you've never built a computer," and I was like, "What?" And I was like, he's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. How would you be able to build a computer?" And I was like, "Bro, like building a computer ain't that hard. Like, you know, I mean, it's it's, you know, it's just not, it's just not hard. You know what I mean? And it's not that it's not hard, but it's like, it's not impossible, right? So, and that kind of spoke to me a little bit because I was kind of like, just like, wow, like, um, you know, this, you know, I guess that kind of speaks. I don't know. That's probably not a good answer, but uh, yeah, I mean, and the only reason I call him stupid is because he's just kind of being an asshole about it. But yeah, I mean, just like I was just like, I don't know. I guess honestly, I think that's what it is. I mean, me, like, I'm just like, I think, I mean, just doing a little bit of traveling and stuff, I feel like crypto is like way more useful than most things. You know, say like, you know, you're always like going to some POS system, like a point of sale system, and it's like, oh, you can't use your international debit card here, or oh, like blah blah blah, or like, okay, you're in this place, you've got to pay in this currency now, and then you get charged like the ridiculous like the official exchange rate. Say like in Argentina, Argentina is like 15 minutes from here. And what's interesting, I haven't gone too many times, but the thing is, there's like an official rate. It's like a very political thing there right now. There's an official rate, and then there's like the non-official rate, right? So like in one is literally twice or like four times the other. Sometimes it's like it's totally insane. So like what I'm saying is like I think that crypto actually, at least in this part of the world, it surprises me that it's not more of like seen as like a medium of exchange, if not a store of value. But yeah, I mean that's just kind of thing. I actually had a guy when I first came here. I had a guy who was like, who I kind of had some referral to from the U.S. I was like, hey, I want to come down here and start mining Bitcoin, blah blah blah. I was like, can you help me out? And he was like, I don't want to help you out. He was like he was such a nice guy, and then he was vitriolically like against helping me, like literally against helping me at all, because it was like related to Bitcoin. I swear, he was like, I don't want to help you out. Bitcoin's a giant scam. You should be ashamed of yourself. Blah blah blah. And I was just like, whoa, like, you know what I mean? I was just like, all right, dog, like, you know, because like with those people, I mean, like, you just can't really tell them shit at the end of the day. Like, I mean, you're not going to convince them by being like, well, actually, like, you know what I mean? Like, you
I
know what
mean,
I mean? So,
yeah, I do find I do find it hilarious when people say Bitcoin's a scam, and these are the same
yeah,
people that are using fiat. I think fiat is the greatest scam that has been, literally forced down upon us for years, and literally the most depreciating asset, the most crappy asset that you can actually hold is fiat, and yet people
yeah,
are still, happy with their minuscule 1 to 2% interest per year, and they're like, wow, this one guy I remember. This was like at the peak of the bull run, man. So I was like dealing with all these DeFi dApps, right? And like some were paying out 1%, some were paying out 2%. Like it was fun, and it lasted for quite some time. Don't get me wrong, it lasted throughout the bull run, and it even lasted after the bull run for some time. And this one guy was like, "Yeah, man, if you invest with us, we're gonna give you the best return. In like 5 years, your assets are gonna grow by 10%." I'm like, and I'm just looking at it, I'm like, okay, awesome, man. And I'm just thinking to myself, I was like, yeah, dude, you have no idea what I deal with. Like once you go into crypto, you can't get out of it, man. Like that's the way once you realize the power, and there are great ideas in the space. And I think it's all about sustainability, right? The one thing that um is right now, because it's still a market. It's still an industry which is in its infancy, right? So sustainability is just an issue at the moment, but I think in time, those who invest, those who keep experimenting, finding great projects, I think they'll benefit a lot, even monetarily, as well as in their lives as well. Because like you said, man, with all these exchange rates and this and that, like crypto is just easy. I remember just recently somebody was asking me, like they wanted to send some money to a country, and from here where I am in Pakistan at the moment, right? And of course they're not. We don't have the best terms with India at the moment, and somebody wanted to send money through that. I was like, dude, just set up an account and buy some Bitcoin or a stable coin and just send it out to that person and tell them to cash out, peer to peer. Simple, like literally no intermediary, no nothing. And it's so simple because once you really start to realize the not just a store of value aspect, just the use case in itself, the transferring assets, the security, the privacy, all those things, it really makes a lot of difference, and
Mhm.
and and coming to that thing with Morphware, like are you guys also like, I know the token, right? The token itself, it's all, related to machine learning. So what exactly is the Morphware token, man? Like, is it like, can we say it's going to be a tradable currency, or is it like more of a governance token, or like what exactly is going to be the role of the tokenized asset, that you guys are building?
Great question. So like I kind of go into this in the white paper for people that haven't read it. But what's really interesting basically is it's basically a store of value in a medium of exchange for machine to machine transactions. So basically the idea is on one side, and there's a little diagram in the white paper about it. On one side, you basically have the data scientist who wants to get their workload trained cheaply, right? And then basically on the other side, you have someone with a GPU enabled desktop rig, right? Or something like that. And the general idea here is instead of the person just kind of like entering their credit card info or their debit card info or something like that, or even wiring someone money, the thing is, the idea is the data scientist puts up a bounty, and then the different worker nodes, and you can read this in the smart contract, the different worker nodes auction on the right to go ahead and do that machine learning workload. And then basically the one that wins goes ahead and trains it. And then if it's at a certain level of accuracy that's predefined by the data scientist, then that bounty is paid out to that GPU enabled rig. So there's actually a ton of utility for it. And I think it was pretty futuristic, and it still is, with regards to like underlying utility. But the thing is, I think right now we're still at a very early stage of the actual data science practice becoming widely adopted from a labor market perspective. So what I mean by that is when VCs talk to us and they go, "Oh, what's your project about?" Blah blah blah, and they go, "Well, there actually aren't a lot of data scientists out there. I mean, just like relative to like the number of people who, I don't know, use toilet paper or something like that, right?" So the general idea here is what we go ahead and do. So what we're optimistic about, one, is data science workloads will continue to become more and more expensive. So just like if you sell hospital equipment, right? You could say like a VC could also say like, well, there aren't a lot of hospital there aren't a lot of buyers at hospitals out there. So like, what are you going to do, right? The thing is, each one of these medical devices costs an insane amount of money, right? So if you get like 10 sales in a year or in a lifetime, that can make or break a medical device company, right? Similarly, I think what we need to do is capture data science talent very early on. And it's like almost like psychologically formative stages, but from an education perspective. And that's why we've actually partnered here with a university. So like basically we're going ahead, partnering with a few university systems down here. And and I think basically getting people to use the network is obviously important, not just to demonstrate traction, but just to get real feedback on the product and iterate. And then here's the thing. Even if in the initial stages our product isn't used a lot from a data science perspective, having the super peer makes it so that doesn't really matter because we'll be earning money with the spare electricity, which is very cheap for us in the off time. And there's a nice, almost regulatory moat there because getting a power purchase agreement in Paraguay is extremely hard. And if you want to do it the right way, you've got to be down here for a long time because it's very
Man,
slow. It's very pathetic.
right, right. And of course, you guys are working on that um, at the moment as we're talking about this. And what would you say, like, for people? I remember, if I correct me if I'm wrong, I remember there were talks in the initial like when we spoke last time, there were talks about investors being able to stake their tokens, right? Um,
Yeah.
So like, what was the like exactly what do they earn when they're staking the more for tokens, number one, and number two, like what's the return, like what's the APY and stuff? Have you guys like worked that out yet, or is it still something which is still being decided as to what will be done?
So it's a little scary. So the interesting thing is the internal talks, just to be completely transparent about this, the internal talks that we've had in the team is that the staking thing has drawn the ire of regulators for big players like Coinbase and stuff. So for us, it kind of freaks us out a little bit because it's like, well, if we go ahead and release a staking program, what do we do? But obviously, we want to like reward our community for hanging out with us for such a long time and sticking it out. So we're trying to think a lot about that, and I think a lot of that will basically come in like a V2 version of the token. That's something I frankly don't want to do, but it's something that's actually been pushed by a couple community members, actually a fair number of them. So I think that could be really interesting. But I think what's really important for us is to start becoming a revenue generating enterprise in a significant capacity. Because once we do, um, then we'll basically have like we won't need to sell tokens to our community to go ahead and pay developers, right? And that's kind of like the original sin, I think, of a lot of projects. A lot of projects, they sell tokens, then they hire developers or more developers, if you will, and then basically there's this kind of like conservation of momentum problem where it's like, okay, well, what do we do now? We told the community that there was a cap on the number of tokens, but we need to keep paying these developers more and more money, like, and then you have this kind of like chicken and egg problem almost. So I think that that'll be very. I think that'll come out in the V2 version of the product, but I think the regulatory stuff, and just from a broader perspective, I think that like waiting for a few things to shake out from a regulatory perspective will kind of dictate some of the some of the timing and some of the stuff because the regulators are really coming after crypto.
Yeah, of course, of course. Obviously, on a positive aspect, I mean, XRP, won their case, and I think right now, I know Richard Hart is going through a really tough one, with the Hex and Pulse
Richard
Chain.
Harvard, he's
But
that like really flashy guy.
yeah, that's the guy. That's the guy. Like Hex was, I think, the best performing asset of the last bull run, man. Like if people
Really?
just got in, yeah, I mean, in terms of growth, right? I mean, that thing, if you got in like, right in the when it came out, it was like at what 0.0000, I think 5 zeros and four, or maybe 4 zeros and four. I think it was 5 zeros. And at the top of the bull run, at the peak, that thing touched 50 cents, man. So like, I remember Hex investors, they bought golf courses, and all these mansions and stuff, and people made a lot of money with it, I have to say. And one thing was, he was a genius marketer, genius marketer.
Yeah.
And I like Pulse Chain personally. I like the project, but of course we're not going to be talking about that right now. But what I do want to touch upon is the fact that they're going through a case right now with the SEC. So if they win, right, if Richard Hart wins this case against the SEC plus the XRP case that the SEC just lost, and everything, I think that's definitely going to create a much more friendlier environment for regulatory environment for crypto, because I feel Gensler, my personal opinion, he's a hypocrite in my view, because when he was like a professor, he was touting and talking praise about Bitcoin and Ethereum and Algorand and all these projects, and then he got assigned at this job, and he started going after XRP and all these projects, while he was good friends with Sam Bankman-Fried, the biggest scammer in crypto. And literally that scam, the whole FTX scam, ran for like a whole good year, for like a good 2 years. And that was a black swan event on its own. Like, the market crashed even more because of Bankman-Fried and all of his
Yeah.
so-called friends. And the worst part is, as this case has been coming out, we were hearing stories that, they were ordered by somebody to keep the Bitcoin price down to a certain point and this and that. So like all this stuff,
Really?
yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean,
Yeah, I haven't heard that one.
yeah, I mean, I was following the case, so this is like one of the things that came out that they were ordered to keep the price low, and so now we don't know by ordered by who exactly, but my biggest question to the SEC is that literally this scam was going on right in front of their eyes, but because Bankman-Fried had a political background, his parents had a political background, and so on and so forth. So literally, they were being ignored, and you had all these great influencers and Kevin O'Leary and all these people literally, praising Bankman-Fried and FTX, and then going after XRP, which I feel they've done quite a bit of, they have a pretty big influence in the crypto space. Going after a project like that and ignoring this is just complete hypocrisy, man. So like I really feel the SEC should just get I think they should be removed as the judge and jury as to what is correct and what is a security and what isn't a security. But that also brings me to my next question. One thing that I noticed in this market now, like you said in the previous bull run, there was a lot of talks about VCs and this and that, and partnerships and big companies backing crypto projects and so on and so forth. But there has been a one interesting resurgence, I would feel like, which is going back to the roots of Bitcoin in a way, and that is the resurgence of fair launches. So my question
Right,
to you
okay.
is, whenever Morphware does come out, like, do you guys have plans to do a private sale, or like VCs standing behind it, like those sort of things, or like are you going to launch Morphware as a fair launch based project?
That's a good question. I think the thing about fair launches is, I'm going to be honest. I think every time I've heard of a fair launch, I've always been like, is that fair? Because it's like, it always seems like, because if you think about it, right? Like, if someone starts a project, they tell their friends and family, so now they're in. Like, I think the perfect example of like the fairest launch, if you will, was SafeMoon, right? It was like this guy and his buddies. Then it was like everyone else, and that thing blew up. They blew the lid off that thing. It became huge. But I don't know. I think it's a good question. I think obviously, I think, well, perhaps not obviously, but for us, I think we're really in this like long term. I mean, I'll just be honest. Living in Paraguay is not easy, right? It's like a little dangerous, a little crazy, right? All this different stuff. My street's not paved, right? It's like it's crazy, like it floods and all that stuff. Um, but the thing is, so what I'm saying is like we're committed to making this work, right? We're really serious about it, and we think it's the future, right? Um, but I guess what I'm saying is, I think when it comes to like this concept of like fair launches, I think it's kind of like the reason that people want something like a fair launch isn't just this concept of fairness. It's because they don't want to get rubbed, because they feel like, wow, like power and resources will accumulate to the founders of the team and the advisors or whatever very rapidly, and these are people that may not have managed a lot of money before, and that power may corrupt them, right? That accumulation of resources may corrupt them, and they may not be able to have the discipline or willpower to uh, delegate those resources in a way that rewards community members in a commensurate way as it does the team and the initial advisors and blah 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 blah, that sort of thing, right? So when you ask me like, am I 100% committed to this concept of fairness? Absolutely, right? I think the number one way we do that is treating the people that have been with us along the way, first and foremost, that bought more for tokens back in December 2021, with absolute fairness, right? And not just fairness, but treating them as first class flyers, if you will, right? Like on an airline or something. Like those people, right? Like treating people, with all the dignity and respect that comes along with being an early believer in a project, right? when it comes to like a broader idea of like how do venture capitalists get involved and things like that, what's really interesting is the venture capitalists that we've spoken to, and this is actually a very popular phenomenon according to CoinDesk, I think. Ever since the bull market kind of faded, investors, institutional investors, say like venture capitalists and beyond, have asked for equity token blends. So when you think from like basically almost like not a balance sheet perspective, but just kind of like a corporate finance perspective, what's really interesting is equity is a claim on the assets. And if tokens aren't securities, that means basically that equity is a claim on the tokens, right? So what's really interesting here is one, that is a very tricky thing to navigate because VCs know exactly what they're doing, especially in the crypto space. VCs know what they're doing when they're offering those term sheets with dangerous equity token blends. Like someone might say, hey, we only want 1% of the tokens, but we want 15% of the equity. Well, 15% of the equity, that may just in some hypothetical reality, and maybe someone will like prove me wrong on this or whatever, but one could interpret, in my opinion, that to be 16% of the tokens in some sense, right? Just from an extremely overly simplistic worldview, just to illustrate this point, right? Because 15% of the equity is a claim on 15% of the assets, and if the tokens are essentially the only assets of that software business, then basically, and there aren't registered intellectual property arrangements, then basically you have the 1% of the tokens that has already been earmarked, and then you have that 15%, right? So what I'm saying is with venture capitalists, what's interesting here is that every venture capitalist that we've spoken to has been interested primarily in equity because they know what we're doing in Paraguay is really cool from a revenue perspective, right? Very hard to go ahead and, I mean, Paraguay is a very closed society. What's really interesting is there is, a lot of the country is extremely poor. So there's like 6 million people according to the last census, I think. But there's a very small amount of people at the very top. And what's interesting is it's hard. It's kind of hard to get into that club, if you will. But if you spend the time here, you do the networking, blah blah blah. Like the general point I'm getting is this is how we got in touch with like the data center operator, right? Right. So like and that was like really hard because I came down here and I didn't really know many people, and the people that I did know, it turns out thought Bitcoin was a scam, or at least one of them did, right? A couple of them. It was like hilarious. So, which I thought, anyway, I thought that was kind of like the premise of our, anyway, whatever. Like of me, it was just like, whatever. But long story short, I think when it comes to the question of a fair launch, if, and I would, here's the thing, I would submit that there's no, just to take a step back, there's no agreed upon standard of what a fair launch is. Right? So I guess I'm wary to call something a fair, like us saying, oh yeah, we're gonna do a fair launch or this and that. But because I think that there are gonna be some restrictions on what exactly that means. Like let's say we go to Consensus to Linea, to their investor network or to Consensus Mesh. They'll say, hey gang, we've got this really cool project. It's a decentralized machine learning network. And what's really cool about it is we're building a super peer in a country with extremely low electricity rates. We've already got the infrastructure in place. All we need is X amount of capital to produce Y amount of income over the next 5 years. Here's our financial model. Boom, right? You can tell I practiced that before. But the thing is, what's going on here is, long story short, if taking that VC money, right, and then if that would disqualify it to become a revenue generating enterprise, to be able to pay top talent to make more for a world-class project, and I already think it is one, but like basically to really like kick it up a notch and compete with like the real top dogs on like the first search engine page result of the first archive page of CoinMarketCap, right? To get up on there in the top 100. I think what we need to do is take VC money. Or we may need to take VC money, or I'm not sure, right? What I'm saying, if taking VC money from like linear Consensus, if that would disqualify us from becoming a fair launch, and this is kind of where my apprehension is coming from, then I would say we would actually, I guess, and I'd probably consult the community first about it, but like I would submit that we would probably go with that. We would probably say, hey, let's take the VC money, right? Let's do this. This is going to help the project, right? Thrive. And yeah, so basically, but if that would disqualify us from being considered a fair launch, for me, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, for me, one of the way I've seen fair launches, in my view, a good reference would be Caspa. I don't know if you know about Caspa. Maybe have you, I'm sure you must
Very
have heard
little.
about it. Yeah, so I mean, it's a really great project, man. I feel a true evolution to Bitcoin. I know a lot of people say that this is the next evolution and so on and so forth. But I really feel Caspa is doing something which is literally building upon that. And then there's another project called Microvision Chain, and I feel that that's going to be I think a layer for Bitcoin. That could literally change the game for Bitcoin. So I mean, these are like some really innovative projects that have had no VCs behind them. You know, so like to me, a fair launch is where literally there's no big entity funding something in order to just profit off of it and then dump it on the retailers. At least I mean,
Yeah.
if I were to simplify it, so how would you here's just my how would you like whenever Morphware decides to come out? I don't know exactly when that is. Maybe you'd like to touch upon that as well. Like what is the plan ahead? What do you guys plan? When are you guys planning to release the token? Exchange listings, if we can talk about that. But the main thing that I want to know is whenever this happens, how can we build confidence for retailers, who get into this project? And because a lot of times what happens is, the pre-salers, the people who bought in the past, something does a 50, 60x, 10x, 100x, whatever, chances are they're gonna naturally sell it at first. And even if they like the project, they'll sell it, and then they'll be like, you know what, I'm just gonna buy it back now that it's at a lower price. I'm gonna keep another moon bag for long term. That's generally the mechanism and
Yeah.
procedure, right? So number one, how would you get new investors to uh on board, in terms of them investing and being confident that they're not going to get dumped upon, which I know it's a very difficult question to answer, especially in the crypto space and the way it's designed. Number one, I know that, I realize that, but I just want your thoughts on that. And number two, let's say, we're talking about a revenue model. I'm sure you have a revenue model in mind. Do you want to touch upon that revenue model, or do you want to keep that under wraps? Because I'm sure, like, you have something. Maybe you don't want to, spill the beans on that. But like, how exactly is this revenue model going to work? And how would this support the more for a token? Are you guys going to do buybacks or things like that? Like, how's everything gonna work? I know I've asked several things, so maybe you would want to answer them, step by step.
No problem. Happy to share the revenue model. I think we have a proprietary revenue model in some senses, but in this day and age, it's not impossible to construct one, obviously. Super interesting stuff on that front. I have a lot to talk about that. But with regards to your question, I actually think it's very easy to manage the VC, the perverse incentive structure you mentioned about are they going to dump immediately on the community? It's just with lockups, right? Like when Harmony purchased $200,000 worth of Morpher tokens, there were lockups in the contract that they actually put in the term sheet. They put like a 1 year minimum lockup, right? And they actually haven't even taken receipt of the tokens yet. So long story short, what's really interesting is I think that's what we would want to do, right? The last thing anyone wants to do is launch and then have the price crater immediately. No one wants, like, I definitely don't want that, because what I've told our term internally, sorry, that's like a mouth thing for me for some reason, a
All
tongue
right.
twister, but basically, like, I'm going to be staked the longest. I mean, like internally with regards to like a vesting schedule, all of us are vesting schedules, right? So the idea is like I am the most like kind of like unaligned with that general practice of like dumping on the community the minute something launches, right? Which I think has kind of like built some cohesion in the team, right? Some trust. But two, I think what's really interesting is this. When it comes to the revenue model, do you want me to go ahead and share my screen?
Yeah, that'll be awesome, man, for sure.
Cool.
Oh, let me
Let's do
just
it.
open that screen sharing option now. Okay, there we go. Now you can share your screen. Yeah.
Cool. So what's interesting here is, sorry, let me just open up Excel. So we've gone through uh, a lot of different models, if you will. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here real quick and just talk about what's going on here. So can you see my screen?
Yeah, I see it. I see it.
Right. So this is called dissertation proposal because the way we tried to go ahead and pitch this, believe it or not, I pitched this to the central bank. I was like, yo, you guys should start mining Bitcoin. Right. And I was like, and then you should give me a PhD in the shit because it's so smart. But they were like, that's not the role of a central bank, you idiot. And there's no computer science PhDs issued in the country anyway, I think. Or at least not through University of Catalca. So what's interesting here is this. Basically, you can see like the NPV and all this different stuff here. But the general idea here is, and we have a bunch of different models. But the general idea here is, well, I guess I'm not really sure where you'd want me to start, right? But the way that I think about everything, at least in terms of finance, and I think the way that a lot of people think about everything, but this may be kind of innovative, for lack of a better phrase, and it's a little corny, but the way that I think about things and the way that I think that this might be innovative, at least for someone hearing this for the first time, but I still do feel like there's a fair amount of innovation here. The general idea here is every second, right? There's a certain amount of guesses that a miner can make. So this is just like an oversimplification of Bitcoin mining in a sense. But the general idea here is that Bitcoin miner makes an enormous amount of guesses every second, right? And let's say that's basically 9.5 quadrillion guesses, right? Because what a Bitcoin miner is trying to do is go ahead and identify what's called the discrete log, right? So if and you always want to get your unit to one in a break-even model or a P&L even, just to identify the unit economics, right? So each batch of guesses is something that we go ahead and consider one unit. Then, right, we have the sales per day, days per month, right? That flows into, and you can see the formulas here for people following along. Basically, then you basically, I remove that, but the general idea here is then you have unit sales per month, right? Then you have number of miners, right? So we could scale this up or down. I could turn this to 300 miners, right? Things, right? But the general idea here, and this version of the model is a little outdated. So not everything is like, there's some stuff that's hard coded and some stuff that needs to be keyed in together. But I'm just kind of pulling this up on the fly. But the general idea here is we also have these costs, right? So when it comes to costs, right, we have depreciation, right, for like the number of miners we would purchase per year, number of data centers, number of substations related to a data center. We have the SG&A, right? This is a much older version of the thing, right? But I could put this together. I could we could do a separate video for this, but just to give you a quick tour of this. The most important thing here is like the variable expenses, right? Because that's related to electrical load, and then the actual sales, right? So this is just kind of like a glimpse into kind of like what we do on our end. Believe it or not, it does take a lot of number crunching just to go ahead and kind of like work down here from a mining perspective. But what's really cool here is we use GoalSeek. I'm not sure if everyone here on the call, or not on the call, but in the interview that's watching, is related to or is familiar with GoalSeek. But the general idea here is that you can arrive at these different numbers of say like the effect, that different things basically have on Morphware's ability to make money. Like how low can the price of Bitcoin get? How expensive can the price of electricity get? How much downtime can we have? Right. So these are all things that GoalSeek and Excel really helps with. And then you can see that basically we have the load broken out for the miners for batch 1 and batch 2 in our financial model, right? And then the one for the actual facility, right? So this Excel spreadsheet is actually one that I just pulled up on the fly. It's pretty. It's this one's actually a work in progress, and I could on a future call I could pull up one that's much more in depth. But yeah, I hope that goes ahead and answers some questions there, like related to what we're doing, and the robustness of the financial model.
Definitely, definitely. It looks very promising for sure, and something I feel that is at the same time sustainable. You know, sustainability is the key goal of any project. I think one, like we already talked about this. There's a lack of sustainability in the crypto space. You know, as you know, with anything, the market conditions dictate, you know, a value of an asset at the moment. But I think what you guys are planning to do is obviously, you know, you guys are thinking ahead for the future, and of course, it's something that's for the long term. So what I feel is that Morphware is gonna, you know, like the plan is that it becomes one of the major players in this space naturally,
Yeah.
and you know, develop from there, and of course, create incentives for investors to not sell, right? Obviously, like like do you feel that the tokens, whenever you guys get listed, do you feel that there's going to be enough incentive for Morphware tokens to not be more of a tradable asset, just like, you know, people just trading all the time, or rather just investing and, you know, literally making money off of it? Do you see that sort of thing happening? Like, do
What
you feel after, like, do you see a future where people are going to treat Morpher as more of a store of value, right? Like investing and making passive income and stuff? Because I remember you guys are creating some really good incentives for the investors, right? You know, for them to be able to, you know, stake their tokens and actually make some really good revenue. Do you feel that it's gonna turn from a more of a tradable asset to a more revenue generating asset in the long run?
I
Like
think that
like
one
like for the investors as well. That's what I mean.
I mean I think it could be really exciting. I mean and I think basically that like basically they could go hand in hand. Basically, I think that it could become really useful and and ideally preserve the value because because well, you know, the thing is in the fate there's the thing. Well, first of all, I guess maybe I should walk that back. Like first of all, the thing is um, a lot of great projects, including like projects like Ethereum and Bitcoin, have lost a ton of value since their all time highs or whatever, right? I'm not sure if those. I'm not sure if like the all time high is a really good metric as a barometer of success with regards to like long term value because it really depends on someone's entry point, I suppose, into a position. Um, but what I would submit is that, well, I mean, honestly, we're just trying our best to go ahead and make that happen, right? And I think we've been. Here's the thing: is we've kind of got a track record of being right about a few things, right? We were like, okay, we're going to be able to do this thing in Paraguay. We've got a bunch of GPUs here now, right? And shout out to Ace Cobra for sending us even more. Um, but what's really interesting here is that in addition to that, we were in the machine learning space before it popped, right? And now it's like booming. I mean, you can't get away from people talking about large language models. And I think that our angle on like ZK related stuff could be really interesting. So I don't want to make any predictions about value, about like the token price appreciating or any of that stuff. I think regulators hate that sort of thing. Um, but I'll also say this: my incentives, me personally, my incentives are 100% aligned with more for success. 100%. I'm like, I'm gonna be the last one out of the building, for sure. And you can see that on like the or you can like talk to the team about like the vesting schedule, whatever. I mean, like I'm visibly the last one out. So yeah, I wouldn't. For me personally, I'm super committed to making this happen. I think we've got a bunch of smart people on board doing backgrounds in like Microsoft and stuff like that. So I think we're well positioned for success here.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I believe so too, man. That's why, it's always a pleasure talking to you and discussing all these things and all the developments. It's really exciting stuff. And that also brings me to my next question regarding more for what do you have any idea what is the supply of the tokens like how like what's the total supply and what's going to be the circulating supply? Have you guys already
Right. So,
decided that?
yep. So the total supply right now, the total supply is 1.2 billion
Okay,
tokens, but only a fraction of that. I think the circulating supply is like 100 million.
a
But I can
hundred.
check on yeah, so I can check on let me go ahead and check right now actually.
Right. And by any chance, people like what was did you guys set a price at the time when people invested in more for initially? I know it's not on any exchange yet, it's not, but the private investors, like what was the price per token by any chance? Do you remember that or
Yep.
do you want to mention that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's 10 cents.
10 cents per token, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
makes sense.
so our goal, so if we list at all anywhere, um we want to come in at least there. And that's like a non-negotiable.
Pardon?
If we list anywhere like on an exchange, there's no way we're gonna list for less than 10 cents.
Yeah, yeah,
That's for sure.
makes sense.
Here's what's really interesting about the exchange, because I just remembered your exchange listing question. The interesting thing about exchange listings is in the last bull run, believe it or not, I actually have an Excel spreadsheet with this somewhere, and a couple guys on my team can vouch for me here. We were being offered by a bunch of different crypto influencers and little kind of like little agencies in the crypto space that were like, hey, you give us $100,000, we'll get you on this exchange, right? Whether it was like Gate.io, but it was everything. It was everything up to even like Binance and FTX. Binance started like 400,000. FTX was 140. I actually have a spreadsheet here where it said that you can get on FTX for $140,000, right? So for me, I think here's what I think, and I've had other exchanges reach out to me since then and be directly and say, I mean, these are crappier exchanges, and not crappier, but whatever. They're not the most prestigious ones, but they were like, hey, we'll get you on this exchange for this amount of money, right? So, I mean, just directly, just straight up, right? And it wasn't a scam. I actually met these people in real life. And what's crazy is, so what I'm saying is, I don't think that getting on an exchange is going to be the hard part for us. I think having a real project with long-term prospects, uh, and with the right partnerships, so not just like these like corny kind of arrangements where it's like we put their logo on the website and that's where it ends, right? It's like we need like serious strategic partnerships with the right people to go ahead and like make this project like a long-term success and have like an impact on the industry. But yeah, I think when it comes to exchange listings, what my philosophy has always been, and it's tragic that this didn't happen. Like we applied to the Binance Accelerator, we got super close to getting in, and then at the last second they were like, nah, da da da. Turns out they had a bunch of like internal stuff at Binance going on at the time, and the person that we were talking to actually quit or whatever. She left the company. It was like the investment director over there. But um, the thing is, my opinion, or my kind of strategy here has always been, let's build, right? Let's like do something serious that any domain expert would look at and say, wow, these guys are doing something real, right? Like, I mean, by that I mean the price of electricity in Paraguay is very cheap, and now we have access to it, and we have equipment here, right? Then so that's like deep domain expertise. But then just coming out of that and going to kind of like the broader marketplace, if you will, um, I think what we need to do is basically go ahead and one, communicate what we're doing very effectively, right? That's like a big problem for a lot of crypto projects that are very tech heavy. There's not a lot of good communication from the team, from the core devs to basically token buyers, right? So that's number one. But number two, I think just like the fashion industry, right? Take Yves Saint Laurent or something like that, or Balenciaga. It's like no one can afford the $68,000 blouse on the runway. But the reason that these companies put together a runway show isn't to sell the $68,000 blouse. It's to sell the down market items. So what I mean by that is this. Take Versace, right? Versace has a runway show in Milan or something, right? And they do all this like haute couture stuff. Then they basically go ahead and maybe sell one or two of those dresses over the course of the entire season. But the reason that they do the runway show is to sell, again, the down market items, not just the leather goods and the cosmetics and the fragrances related to the label, but also the downstream brands like Very by Versace, these offshoots of the core brand. So what I mean by that is when it comes to listing on an exchange, the reason I'm bringing that up is let's get on the most prestigious exchange possible, right? In everyone's mind right now, I think what's very interesting, and here's the plot twist about like this bear market, is that's actually very unclear. Who's the leader? Who actually has a balance sheet? It's not all fucked up like FTX's, right? Because a lot of people on crypto Twitter, at least, actually a lot of people beyond, even in like the thin meme economy, a lot of people are like, "Yo, man, is Binance screwed up? They're asking a lot of questions about everyone because all these exchanges kind of imploded. Not to mention like there was like that Quadriga thing in like Canada, Quadriga CX or something, and then there was Mt. Gox right before that. So there's been like this track record of exchanges just like rapidly imploding, customers not being able to get their assets. It's been very dramatic and very high profile. I think a lot of people are unclear about who's going to be the next kind of exchange that's really prestigious to go ahead and get listed on. And that's who we'll target in the next bull run, if you will, when we're looking to get listed on an exchange. So by that, I mean, like, let's say Coinbase, right? Coinbase is like super solid. There's even that thing called the Coinbase effect, that multiplier factor of like when you get listed on Coinbase, price go up, right? But what's interesting is that Coinbase's success has drawn the ire of regulators, right? They've got a big old target on their back because they're just so big and successful, right? So I think it'll be really interesting to see, like maybe in a year, say we launch in January 2024, right? Which is where I think that the bull run will kind of start to really be observable. You could say that we're even starting to kind of like get out of the bear market now, or we're at least thawing out, right? It's like a piece of meat in the fridge. It's like it's at least it's out of the fridge and on the counter now, and it's thawing out a little bit, right? But it's like, and now everyone's asking like, well, like what? I mean, because these are all private. Most of these companies are privately held aside from Coinbase. They're like, people are like, what's going on with these balance sheets? Because venture capitalists are very famous for not marking things to market, or at least delaying the market to market. So like, if someone's like, say like FTX, right? FTX was super into all these different coins, but they delayed the process of marking things to market, right? So sorry. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I'm listening.
Oh no, sorry. My roommate was calling me, but I told him I told him to call me later.
Sure. I think we, yeah. Sorry, go on. Yeah.
No. But that's basically it. I think when it comes to exchanges, I think it's like I just don't know who's going to be like the horse in front of all the other ones in the racetrack, right?
Right.
So I think
Yeah.
this and what we've seen here, I think in the crypto space in general, and kind of outside the crypto space, but in like just in all asset classes, is this flight to quality, right? People are very like there's a lot of geopolitical stuff going on. There's this real kind of like people are looking for, diamonds in the rough, if you will, obviously, but just also just like not necessarily safe haven assets, but things that have been around. So I think that's one of Morphware's kind of like I think it's one of our it's one of our more redeeming qualities, if you will. It's like we were in the AI space far before anyone else, right? And we're executing. We're still alive. We're actually still doing it. We're here in Paraguay. We're actually doing what we're saying we're doing, and yeah, it could be very interesting. I mean, in a
Absolutely,
great way.
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the main thing that you guys are doing is you guys are building and building and building, and that's what a solid project does. Like in the space, if for longevity, like it goes beyond just hype and marketing and all of that. The main thing is that you got to build a strong foundation, and I think you guys are working on that. Which brings me to another question of mine as well, is that regarding the partnerships. Do you want to talk about any of these particular partnerships, any strategic ones, anything that you are, we're really proud of, and or something that you feel is is going to get people that are watching this right now, because I know people that are going to be watching this are in the crypto space. So naturally, anything that they're familiar with, anything is more fair pardon with anything that like that. Do you want to touch? Do you want to touch on that?
Great question. So I think basically, like the last time we spoke, we may have discussed Teller and Harmony. We did open up partnership conversation with Pocket Network, but the problem is we can't use Pocket because it doesn't have a WebSocket, and that's what we need to go ahead and listen to events on chain and that are kind of like emitted from the Ethereum, and then go ahead and process them, right? So that'd be really cool as kind of like a replacement for Infura. But we weren't really able to use Pocket as much as we wanted to. I think it's a super cool project, but they don't have WebSockets. So, and it makes sense why they don't have WebSockets because it is decentralized, and I think it might be related to like static IP addresses. And a lot of kind of like residential level internet service providers don't really provide static IP addresses, and dynamic IP or kind of like fake being a static IP address is kind of a little more complicated than a lot of people kind of like want to go ahead and do, if you will. But I think also, I think just kind of maybe this is going to sound like an excuse, but I really do believe this. I think in this new bull run, partnerships are going to be treated with much more skepticism about like why is this partnership occurring? What's the underlying utility here? And then two, like what is the fruit of this labor? Right? Like, so obviously, like you could say, like, well, we're all in the crypto space, or like we're going to use them for this and that, blah blah blah, right? But I think that I think that's how a lot of I think that's how a lot of token buyers got burned in the last bull run. There was this huge emphasis on doing that, and then basically there was like one project. Remember that? What was that project where they were providing Wi-Fi to people?
Oh
It
yeah,
was
yeah,
not like
there was one. What was it called? Yeah, well, Telcoin? No, not Telcoin. Um, Wait, are you talking about the one that was made by McAfee?
no, it was like this one where basically like their partnership wasn't real.
Oh
They
man,
said
I
they
yeah,
said
I
that this
mean
partnership wasn't like a real thing.
that does sound familiar. I just can't recall exactly which one this was.
Yeah, yeah. Tragically, there's probably more than one like that.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah, it happened to me, man. I mean, there was this one particular project that had supposedly, it was a gaming coin, and it had a lot of partnerships. Apparently, had a lot of partnerships, and one of their biggest partnerships was with the famous YouTube influencer PewDiePie, right? Now, um, from a fundamental aspect, from a marketing aspect, that was great. I was like, yeah, this is something worth investing in, right? But turned out that PewDiePie was never really involved with them, And then, like they did a massive rug pull, and they had everything. They had a great looking website. Everything was great. Everything was looking awesome, but it was like a complete scam, unfortunately. So yeah, this is I think you're right. I think in this upcoming bull run, I do feel the markets and the investors have matured a lot. I'm not talking about the novice investor. I'm talking about people that are in this space, because the novice investor still doesn't even know how to make a wallet, a Bitcoin wallet or Ethereum wallet or whatever, right? They don't even know. They don't even know how to make this thing work. Ledger. They don't even know how to make that work.
Right.
So I'm just talking about people that have been in this space. There's a lot of. I do feel that it's going to be a more mature market, but of course, seeing what I saw some months ago, with the rise of Pepe and all that, I still feel there's going to be a lot more crazy, those type of things as well. Because I remember this, well, there was this whole trend of people starting a token, based on their names. And literally, I saw this one guy on Twitter, man, believe it or not. There's one guy, he said that send Ethereum to this address. Like this is like a new way of getting a pre-sale, man. People just send ETH to that address. And he's like, and you're not going to get anything back. And dude, that guy earned more than 100 Ethereum. Can you believe that?
Damn, that's crazy,
Like,
bro.
like he literally told people that you're not going to get anything back. You're not going to get anything in return. Yet people send 100 Ethereum, and I was just scratching my head, and I was like, man, there's so many great projects in this space. You could have just sent money there. You could have put your money there. Why did you do that? So there's still that crazy, immature, buyer in this space, unfortunately. But I do feel that I do feel that there will be some more due diligence this time. This brings me back to my other question, and that is that what do you feel like as a developer, right, who's been in this space? And I'm sure you were also an investor in this space. I think you've been in this space for quite some time, right? In the crypto space yeah. So as a dev, I know Morph is a great project. And I do feel that when it comes out, everybody should check it out. But would you like to give any advice to anybody? Of course, nobody can give any financial advice, but what do you feel are other great projects that are worth investing in, from an investor perspective and as a developer, because of course there's one thing where, guys like me, we can look into something, we can read the white papers, we can understand that, okay, this has strong fundamentals, but then of course a developer who's also investing, who's just been in this space, would give a much clearer perspective. So do you feel that there are any projects, for people to look at, besides, of course, Morpher is one of them, but like, do you feel there's there's some good stuff out there, people, teams that are building, like,
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that when it comes to investing, I'm a little wary to go ahead and hand out investment advice. Because
of
I wish
course,
I had a crystal ball, but I don't.
not financial
But
advice, yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I think, but what I think are cool projects are kind of, this is going to be really boring, but I think Bitcoin and Ethereum are just like absolute, like rock solid in many respects. And when you think about like underlying utility, Bitcoin's like digital gold, and Ethereum is more of like the world computer, if you will, or like the smart contract layer. So I think that like those are like two things that me personally, I would bet on over anything else. Again, obviously this isn't financial advice at all, but those are the projects that I think have some staying power. There's always like projects that kind of come and go for a variety of reasons. Solana was super hyped up. There's a lot of like interesting innovation there, but I think with a lot of different projects, like it's hard to say what's going to stay and what's going to go. But Ethereum's like shown that they can transition their actual protocol from proof of work to proof of stake successfully without a hitch. So that's pretty impressive. And Bitcoin's just been around forever.
Right, makes perfect sense. And that brings me to another question. I mean, a lot of people, have this belief that POS is not as as secure as POW. What are your thoughts on that, man?
I 1000% subscribe to that idea. I know it sounds stupid because people, whenever someone makes that detraction, the response to that is, well, someone could just buy all the mining power, and that's totally true. But it's much harder to do. I mean, look at us. I mean, we're here trying to set up actual node infrastructure, and it's very hard. And there's a lot of operational excellence required in doing something like that. So I think just like spooling up um, more nodes, if you will, especially more like miners in a proof of work type system, is long, and it's predictable in many senses, right? In the sense that if someone's building up enough computing power to go ahead and subsume the entire Bitcoin network, you would have to build like $32 million worth of, you'd have to build like maybe $100 million worth of substations, something like that. And these are like not, the substations take like a year and a half to build. It's super duper long. It's not necessarily complex, but it's long just to get things to the bus bar. So whereas with proof of stake, there's all sorts of games people could play. They could be like accruing things to different wallets and then send everything programmatically to one and then kind of like vote on something in a DAO. Who knows, right? So I think that proof of stake is inherently a lot less secure. And things happen all the time, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And regarding the bull market, I know nobody has got a crystal ball, but the biggest question that a lot of people ask, when moon, right? So, well, what do you feel, man? Like, when do you think the next bull run is really going to start? Really going to start taking shape? Do you think history is going to repeat itself, or are we going to see a new trend, a new pattern?
You mean like with regards to the halvening or what?
Yeah, after the halvening, do you feel that's when the bull run is actually going to like really start to take off? Like, do
That's
you
a
have
good
any
question.
ideas when it's going to start or when it's going to be the peak? I mean, just curiously, man, it's like we're just speculating here, but I know, but
Yeah,
naturally
I'll take,
being in the
mhm.
space, one kind being in the space for as long as you've been, I think, you have a much more clearer perspective than many other people. So yeah. What are your thoughts on that, man?
Okay, appreciate that. But so I'll tell you what my aspirations are, or at least like what I hope will happen, and kind of like what my observations are. But this is definitely not financial advice, and it's definitely like not what I recommend people make decisions based off of. But what I think is happening is I think that this is going to sound super weird, but I think that the Federal Reserve is not as independent as kind of like they present themselves to be. And I think that they do, I think that basically like the executive branch does wield some influence over them, right? Even like guys at Goldman Sachs will even tell you this. Actually, a guy at Goldman Sachs actually did tell me that at a little cocktail thing. And that was his opinion, right? And what's interesting here is, and what I'm getting at is, when you think about the biggest impact on the price of almost all cryptocurrencies, if you will, especially kind of like net over like the last bear market, if you will, that we could still be in arguably, it's been the Fed funds rate, right? So like the Fed funds rate was really hammering long duration assets being tech stocks and crypto, right? And the thing is, uh, now, even though the Fed funds rate isn't rising as quickly as it was before, the thing is now there's this element of uncertainty about when will the Fed stop raising rates and when will it stop bringing them down, right? And I think that there is actually some political utility there. And what I mean by that is this: basically, the Democrats are going to have a very hard time being reelected, at least to the White House, I think. Um, and it's not a political statement; it's just kind of like an observable fact from like looking at poll data. And I think like basically, and what I'm insinuating here is I think that they need to keep the rates kind of a little bit more uncertain to basically scrunch up the amount of time that the economy has to take off, if you will. So what I mean by that is basically like, let's say you had, let's say let's say Jerome Powell came out and he said, hey, this is exactly the course we're going to go on. We're 100% committed to it. We're not going to raise rates anymore, right? Then things would be much less uncertain. And investors, I'm talking about like big institutional investors, would be able to make a lot of decisions based on that information. But if you're a little bit more uncertain, you say, hey, we don't really know when we're going to stop doing this, the economic data is unclear about this and that. I'd submit that basically, what you have is this intense pressure to go ahead and almost like make the economy take off in a short amount of time. And the time period that would be is an election year, right? I mean, Clinton famously said in his election campaign, it's the economy, stupid, right? And I think Biden, with his Bidenomics kind of like nomer, if you will, that they will want to consolidate that that kind of uptick in the economy during the election year to basically go ahead and make that case to the American people. So, take that for what you will, but I think that like kind of like 2024 is kind of like my target year for long duration assets seeing some relief.
Right, right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, man. And I actually agree with you on this as well. I feel the same about this as well. And what do you think? What do you think is good? Where do you think is going to be the peak of the next bull run? I do feel personally, for me, I feel I don't know why, man. This is I can't give you an exact answer, but from what I'm seeing, the way things are developing, um, I feel that this is going to be the longest bull run as well compared to the previous ones. Like if you notice that that step by step, every bull run has had a bit of an increase in their you know longevity sort of thing. Whenever they've for whatever amount they've lasted, and I feel like this could last maybe I could be wrong, but could last up until 2026. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think, man, there's a lot of geopolitical kind of like factors, I think to take into consideration. I really don't know, to be honest. I think I guess the way you could frame it is, well, with regards to like what is the max height, or like what is like the how high could Bitcoin go basically, which will affect kind of like, or at least inform the prices of other cryptocurrencies, or like the alts, if you will. I really don't know. I mean, a lot of people were shouting like $100,000 on crypto Twitter, at least. It was like $100,000, no brainer, right? And the thing is, like, we never got there, right? For a variety of reasons. Was it minor capitulation? Was it institutional sentiment souring? Was it the Fed funds rate? Who knows, right? But it could be. It's not. That's not like a MECE level of. It's not an amount. It's not that. It may be a combination of those. Is what I'm trying to say, I suppose. But when it comes to like the length of the next bull run and how high Bitcoin could go, honestly, I have no idea. I think if the United States goes to war with China, it's kind of like an all bets are off situation, and it depends on whether basically like whether Bitcoin is considered like a safe haven asset or not. It depends on like a variety of things, right? So I think it'll be really interesting to think about. I really have no idea, to be honest, but I think that I'll say what I know. I know that like a lot of this technology is not like this goofy fly by night scam stuff that like FTX had going on, right? It's like here to stay. It's super cool what a lot of people are doing, and we're just starting to like understand like how powerful it is for computers to be connected to one another, even if they're not owned by the same person, right? So like this whole idea of like decentralization of computing power definitely isn't going away. And in an increasingly in an increasingly uncertain world, I think that people will be one, constrained for resources, and two, maybe even be driven to using like decentralized solutions.
Right, right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, man. So I think coming back, I think I've taken quite a bit of your time, man, to be honest with you, and I really appreciate your insight and everything that is happening. So a couple of things now related to Morpher as we end this, as we're in our final final how should I say, the final phase of this interview. uh, uh, where do you see Morpher in the next, in the next 5 years? I would say number one, and number two, do we have any dates for the release of the tokens? When are we actually getting some listings? Like I know you haven't just like I know we've talked about the uncertainty in terms of which DEX, which which centralized exchange to be listed on and this and that. But any do we have a year at least, like where when it's going to be coming out exactly, kind of? And number two, are you guys planning to do a release of tokens on dexes as well? Do you plan to make it cross chain, like literally Morpher could be bought on, let's say Ethereum, Binance Smart Chain, Basechain now, because I think Basechain is one of the most promising ones, man, at the moment in terms of the action. I mean, a lot of money hasn't even started to come in, pour into that yet, but I mean, it's like kind of like a no-brainer in my view because it's literally made by Coinbase's own DEX. So, that sort of thing. So, like, do you guys have plans to become like a like to be on various chains and stuff? Like, would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, we definitely envision a multi-chain future. Ideally, within the next 5 years, we'd like to be producing our own chips. Sounds really random, but it makes all the sense in the world when you think about the computational capacity required to go ahead and process some of these more complex machine learning algorithms and to do some ZK stuff, even into Bitcoin mining. There's a really cool open source project called BitAxe, and I've actually taken a hard look at some Bitcoin processors myself with regards to how they're actually kind of like implemented, if you will, at that FPGA level. I think FPGAs will be kind of the direction that we go as we kind of, or the FPGA GPU blend, just because you can reflash an FPGA for a variety of purposes, and a GPU can handle the embarrassingly parallel problems. But yeah, I think that basically that's kind of like the long-term vision. When it comes to an actual release date for the token, we're targeting 2024. We think that could be really cool. Obviously, the sooner the better, but there's just a lot of different stuff going on with regards to the regulatory agencies and the overall market dynamics.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, man. So 2024 should be exciting, I think, and I think that's where, as we've discussed, where we're going to start seeing some serious momentum in terms of positive market conditions if everything goes according to plan, right? So it makes perfect sense. My final question would be, what are your like? I know we haven't really touched upon it, but if you would like to briefly explain to people what exactly is ZK? I know zero knowledge, but what are the benefits of ZK and how is it being implemented in Morpher? And what do you feel like? What are the benefits of all of this? Could you touch upon that?
Yeah, so ZK based solutions, basically, I honestly think that ZK technology could have two. It could have two. Well, it could have a bunch of applications with regards to what we're doing. One, we could have our own prover type marketplace where basically the worker nodes could prove that they did the machine learning workload without having to go ahead and kind of like release the solution, if you will. right? It's kind of like the classical explanation of ZK stuff. Like the idea is like you have a classroom full of students taking a test, and instead of the teacher kind of having to go check every single test, this is obviously an oversimplified explanation, but each student would be able to just kind of reveal something about their answer, which would prove that they actually did the mathematical work to arrive at the answer to the questions, or the answers to the questions posited in the test, right? So when it comes to so that I think that's the main implementation. That's the main kind of like impact that ZK would have on what we're doing. But in addition to that, what could be really cool is just us making money from ZK proving. Just literally just just becoming a revenue generating enterprise, and like literally just having money to pay more developers with, to go ahead and build all this stuff out with, because that's what I think is kind of like the main constraint for us. But I think for anything, money is kind of like, in a sense, it's the easiest problem to solve. So I'm confident that we'll be able to go ahead and like solve that problem.
Awesome, 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 man. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having this conversation with you. I'm sure people learned a lot, as always, with your insight and knowledge. And you got to keep me updated, man, with all the developments. I'm sure we're gonna touch base again, probably in 2024. Regarding whenever Morpher is coming out, and everything. We'll talk more about that, and hopefully by that time, probably some more interesting partnerships are going to be on the horizon as well. I
Cool.
mean, fruitful partnerships. Not just name tags and stuff like that. Because I know, yeah, the type of person that you are and the type of team that you have. You guys are all about serious business here in this space, and none of that flashy stuff and empty promises. So I'm really looking forward to the release of Morpher. Personally speaking, I'm very bullish on your project. I think it's one of the most innovative projects in this space, and it's not even out yet. So it's not even like on exchanges and stuff. But you guys have been building and building, and that's the real mark of a great project. And it's been an absolute pleasure. I would love to see that video, which I will attach at the end of this interview when I'm editing it. So once again, Kenzo, it's been a great pleasure. Thank you so much for your time and for all your knowledge, and really appreciate it, man.
Thank you, man. Thanks for your time, and looking forward to talking again.
Absolutely, man. Take care. Have a good one.
See you.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.